I'm Ashley.
And I'm Jared.
And we're from Callaghan College, Jesmond, here at Newcastle Region Art Gallery, interviewing Euan MacLeod.
Hi.
Do you ever feel like your work is too overanalyzed?
I think it's interesting because I think that talking about visual art is, talking about paintings is very, very hard. And I think it's interesting in this context because how, you know, like with education, how do you say to somebody what's going wrong with their work, or how do you engage, how do you sort of get that relationship happening so that you can talk about someone's work and make suggestions other than with language. It's very, very tricky. Do
you feel the pressure that your work's been looked at by school students and being analysed?
No, it's kind of nice, really. I quite like it. But I might not agree with what people say. And I think a lot of the time, it's like any kind of history. Certain things will be over interpreted, and other things that are probably equally as important will be under-analysed. So why does somebody do something, you know, why did I paint that painting? Probably just because I happened to be in Newcastle and looking out of Noah's, and it's a beautiful view, and I had my paints with me and I did it, you know. That's probably the reason, but you know, there could be another, you could make up some other reason.
So I have noticed that there is a boat in many of your paintings. What is the significance of this?
It was a metaphor for a figure. It was a metaphor. It was a way of thinking in terms of how could you represent the figure in a landscape without actually having a figure. So it was a very loosely, pretty obvious kind of symbol. But I also used it because I loved the shape of it. I loved the fact that inner, you know, interior versus the exterior of the hills. So just as a motif, it's a very beautiful thing.
There's also the repetition of the figure. What's the mystery with that, and why is it repetition so much?
I'm not quite sure why the figure's so important to me, but it is. And I guess the figure is a representation of self, but and maybe it just means I've got an incredibly big ego and want to put myself in everything. But even a landscape that hasn't got a figure in it, I kind of imply it. You know, the figure, the shadows almost feel like big bodies, and you know.
Is there any reason they're faceless and genderless, and the size of them?
Yes, generally because I don't like to be too specific. I think everything you put into a painting has a reference. So if you say you put a hat on a figure, what's that hat? That hat is referring to something. You know, it might be referring to fashion, or it might be referring, so it might be like historical, or it might be, you know, some sense of protection, or it might be, but it refers to something.
What's the significance of having these vast open spaces and the lonesome figure?
Yeah, well, there you go. There's a good question too. They're not all, I guess the landscape's not always vast, and the figure's not all, you know, I mean, I try and vary it and I try and change it around, but they have changed at times. But you're quite right that a lot of the time there is that vastness, but there's other times when the figure becomes more, the balance becomes more in favour of the figure than the landscape. But I guess the bottom line is that there's this sense of the relationship between the two. And again, I don't know. And the same as using the figure, why, I don't know. But I kind of love that, playing the figure off against the landscape.
So why in the painters and the painting is the actual canvas painting different to what the foreground is, the background?
It's not always. I've done that a couple of times, yeah. Sometimes I did that. I don't know whether that works or not. It's there's a couple of times I've done that and played around with it, just as a sort of a kind of some funny joke about the difference between the two of them. But generally, if I do it, they're not.
When you were doing those paintings, were you in the painting that was getting painted, or the one in the background? Like, where were you when that painting was taking place?
That's a good question. Initially, I was the person painting somebody else painting, but of course, as soon as you paint that, and it's the same. If you think in terms of a landscape with a figure in it, the viewer is you. You're the viewer. You're the one looking at the at the figure. So it almost implies two people, but it's very difficult to get that sense of you being the viewer.
Do you prefer working in the studio or on plein air? And how does the change of environment affect your artwork and feelings?
And it does affect the paintings a lot. I prefer both of them at different times. There's something kind of lovely about working on plein air. Our teacher described them as holidays. He called his paintings that he did outside his holidays. And there is something lovely about just painting for the sake of it. I mean, with these paintings, there was no intention that they be anything other than just something I enjoyed. You know, I just...
Painting for the fun of it.
Yeah, painting just for the pure enjoyment and painting what's in front of you, getting a sense of what was there, you know, time and place. But I don't think that's enough. I think that I need then to take that into the studio and develop it into something else. But I think a lot of times people will say that the works on plein air works have a freshness that's not in the works from the studio.
Yeah, it's like the colour palette. Is that deliberate or that just evolve over the course of your art making?
Yes, I certainly see myself as more being concerned with tone rather than colour. So I think in terms of, you know, you've got lots of blacks and you've got lots of whites and the colours have a certain tone. I sort of see the colours more in a tonal way. But someone misconstructed that as they came up to me and said, "Why do you hate colour?" And I said, "Oh, I don't hate colour." And he said, "Well, you said you hated colour," and I don't hate colour. It's just that that's not how I think of myself as a colourist. I'm certainly aware of certain paintings that give all their answers. I do love ambiguity in painting, where you can look at an area and then you say, "What's that? You know, is it this or is it that or is it?" You know, there's something there, but you can't quite see it. And that feels much more real to me, because like when you're waking up and you see some shape in the room and you think, what the hell is that? And you just cannot work it out. You know, you study it, but you can't work it out. When you turn the light on, you go, oh, it's a cardigan, how boring. You know. So yeah, that ambiguity seems really intriguing.
What do you feel is the significance of art prizes in artist success? And did winning the Archibald Prize for you in any way change your view on art making?
It certainly didn't change my view on art making, no. Look, I think they're a necessary evil.
So you wouldn't say you like them very much then?
I think their competitions are a weird concept. I mean, you know, you guys are all probably going to be maybe competing for the art prize, I don't know. But, you know, someone will get picked out and said, you know, you've won, you've lost. Oh. And that's kind of like, you know, it's not how it works. You know, if you go to an exhibition and someone says, oh, which is your favourite work? That's different than saying, which is the best work here? You know, and if someone said, which is the best work, it's a sort of, it seems like a dumb thing. But on the other hand, the Archibald gets people to come into art galleries that would never come in any other way, and it gets them interested in some way. And if only a few of them ever, if only you got a couple of them and they continued to look at work, that's a really wonderful thing.
Thank you for your time, Euan. We have learnt a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.